Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 152, Meno 99c to D. Meno has gone along with the idea that politicians are good men and they lead well without the benefit of episteme, knowledge or understanding. He has agreed that instead of episteme, the politicians use eudoxia, which is the good opinion of others. As we mentioned last time, eudoxia is not to be equated with either orthodoxa or alethesdoxa. These are opinions which would be in the leaders themselves. For this reason, Socrates called them as beneficial as episteme, because they apparently lead to the same beneficial results. The argument went that episteme and doxa were equally beneficial, and anyone holding either of these is beneficial. However, now the politician not only doesn't have episteme, he doesn't even have the beneficial sort of doxa, orthodoxa, correct opinion, or alethesdoxa, true opinion. Socrates has transferred the reason for the politicians being beneficial from their own doxa to the good opinion, the eudoxia, of the citizens. We all have opinions, but they are not usually the sorts which lead to beneficial results. But Socrates has now placed the emphasis on the politicians appearing to be good through the good opinion of the citizens. Socrates continues to develop both these themes, that the politicians have no understanding of what they are doing, and that they rely on the good opinion of the citizens. Socrates leaves it to Meno to conclude that the politicians only appear to be beneficial. Socrates treats them as if they are beneficial, although he emphasizes that they have no intelligence, no understanding, while whatever good opinion there is not in the politicians themselves, but in the citizens. Uk un, o Menon, axion tutus theus calentus andras, hoitenes nun me echontes pola kai megala catorthusin, hon pratusi kai legusi. Panuge. So, Meno, it's worth calling these men divine, whoever, while not having intelligence, accomplish many and great things of the things that they do and say. Absolutely. Calling these men divine emphasizes the good opinion in the citizens. Why they should be called divine of all things we'll come back to a little later. The verb which I translated as accomplish is katorthusi, which contains within it the same stem which we find in orthe, as in orthodoxa. Orthodoxa I translated as correct. The Latin element rect is an exact translation of the Greek element orth, as we can see, for example, in the parallel words rectangular and orthogonal. The Greek verb katorthoo is a literal parallel to various English verbs derived from Latin: erect, correct, direct, and other similar verbs. It also means to do the right thing. Thus, in one statement, we have the 3 points that the good opinion of the politicians is to be found in the citizens. The politicians themselves lack sense, nous, and Socrates portrays them as actually doing the right thing. And not only that, they do the right thing in many and great things. These are the sorts of things which do actually impress the many. In 5th century Athens, these things would include defeating the Persians, rebuilding Athens with great public works, 3 gymnasia, the Acropolis, Temple of Zeus, although not all these works were completed in that time, but the idea is that the civilians would be very impressed by such great works. The more political citizens in Athens could take credit for what, after all, should have been works planned and funded by the democracy. Socrates now tries again. Orthos aran kaloimen theus tehus nunde legomen chresmodus caimantes caetus poeticus hapantas cae tus politicus uchecis statuton faemenan theus te enaik enthusiadzen epipnus ontas cae catechomenus ectu theu hotan kotorthosi legontes polacae megala pragmata medene dotes hon legusin panuge. So we would correctly call divine, whom we were saying just now, the prophets and seers and all the poets. And we might claim that the politicians, no less than them, are divine and enthused, being inspired and possessed by the God, whenever they accomplish by saying many and great matters, knowing nothing of what they say. Absolutely. Prophets and seers are considered divine because they are vessels for the voice of Apollo. It is Apollo who predicts the future, not the seers or the prophets, and they don't even know what they are saying. Politicians are similar to prophets and seers in that they really don't know what they're doing, and they are called divine by certain people, but not because they are inspired or enthused or possessed by Apollo. In fact, Apollo would be one of the last gods an Athenian politician would want to be associated with. Apollo was the god of the people of Delphi, who are arch rivals of Athens. There's a virtual character assassination of Apollo in Aeschylus's trilogy, Oresteia, in the final play, where Apollo makes a complete mess of defending Orestes, while Athena is presented as wise and very adept at statecraft, which is what a politician would rather have. Apollo is the god of prophecy, but he is not known for being the god of statecraft. I should point out that the name of Apollo isn't mentioned here. Socrates simply talks about the god. But in the context of prophets and seers, this has to be Apollo. Meno appears to be quite satisfied by the notion of politicians possessed by Apollo. Meno, after all, isn't Athenian. As a Thessalian, he may have a preference for Apollo. Anyway, the main point here is that he is completely unconcerned by politicians lacking intelligence, lacking understanding, and seems not to have noticed that now Socrates has provided another reason for guiding well, and that reason is being possessed by a god. The argument is supposed to be showing that although politicians don't have episteme, they do have doxa, whether it is correct opinion or true opinion. But so far, Socrates hasn't shown anything of the sort. He began by talking about eudoxia, which would be the good opinion of others, and now he's suggesting that politicians are possessed by a god, and surely a god doesn't have opinion, a god has episteme. The comparison with prophets and seers also reveals another point about politicians, that they talk a lot. Socrates suggests that we could claim that politicians are divine whenever they accomplish saying many and great matters. He emphasizes the point by ending not knowing anything about what they say. When politicians talk about many and great matters, they appear to be accomplishing things, but it's merely a matter of rhetoric. And as we know today, politicians use rhetoric to talk about things about which they have absolutely no understanding. And yet, because they use rhetoric, they appear to understand the subjects, and people are impressed by them. When Socrates earlier said that politicians use eudoxia, in other words, they exploit the good opinion of others, we know now how they do that. They use rhetoric. A great orator may be called divinely inspired. It's as if a god is speaking through him. Unlike a seer or a prophet, however, a politician is aware that he's the one doing the talking. It's not a god talking through him, but it is indeed very often the case that the politician doesn't understand what he's talking about. Were we to entertain the possibility as a reality that a god is controlling the politician, we would have yet another case of someone who knows absolutely nothing having all knowledge within himself. The previous case, in which we had someone who knows absolutely nothing but has all knowledge within his soul, is in the theory of recollection. As we saw then, the theory of recollection was introduced by Socrates in order to encourage Meno to begin to think for himself, while this description of divinely inspired politicians is completely passive, unless, of course, Meno began to compare things for himself.